So I've been telling myself it was time to finally get on with the YouTube blogging, and the recent experience of being interviewed on a true crime gave me the chance to kickstart my own experience. My name is Marco Visconti, and I've been involved with the Western esoteric tradition for the best part of my adult life. And in fact, I started dabbling with it before that in my teens. My main focus has always been Thelema, the religious and magical philosophy centered around notorious occultist, poet, mountaineer, and polymath Aleistercrowley. But I've been studying in detail also Rosicrucianism, alchemy, Freemasonry, and Gnosticism. Since August 2018, I've been writing about my own experience in Ordo Templi Orientis and the string of abuse cover-ups I personally experienced, and as well as the kind of ostracism I received from my former brothers and sisters as I decided not to bow to the climate of subservient omerta the leadership expects from its members. You can find various articles on my website, marcovisconti.org, and I will put all the relevant links below. In fact, I have found disturbing parallels between Scientology's dreaded policy of fair game with the kind of treatment I received from o.t.o. However, I'm not going to address these facts today, since I simply needed this brief introduction to move on to the subject, and that is how I was contacted to be interviewed on a true crime YouTube channel, and how the experience showed a frankly worrying spotlight on the potential threat of another wave of satanic panic. For those who don't know about it, satanic panic was a long wave of religious fanaticism that swept across the world in the 1980s, starting with the publication of the book Michelle Remembers in 1980. I will put a link below for those who want to read all the details about it, but in a nutshell, a little girl claimed to have suddenly remembered suppressed memories from a past made of sexual and violent abuse at the hands of a satanic cult sprawling around the world and hiding in plain sight. What's important to make clear immediately is that this book has since been completely discredited by dozens of experts in the medical, psychological, and sociological field. Unfortunately, this doesn't stop hordes of conspiracy theorists to keep considering it absolute truth, and in many ways, the satanic panic craze heralded the era of fake news that we live in today. And so here we are in 2019, and with my interview with Alan Winicombe, aka the Armchair Detective, a rather successful true crime channel here on YouTube. I received an email from one of his collaborators asking me if I would be interested in speaking on a live stream about my experience of abuses in o.t.o. And I immediately accepted, as I strongly believe in the absolute necessity to amplify that message loud and clear. But since I'm a very curious beast by nature, I also went and looked up who this person was, what was the whole channel about, etc. And that is when I realized that the Armchair Detective, AD for short, was investigating on the murder of Shannon Watts and her children committed by her husband, Chris Watts. And once more, I will put a link below for those of you who want to get acquainted with the case. Now, I am not interested in true crime. I never was, and likely not going to start now. But in order to understand who my host was going to be, I looked into this case extensively over the past 2 weeks, and I think I can consistently report that Chris Watts is widely accepted to be a narcissist. He pleaded guilty to all the murders and was convicted to it, is now in life prison. His mistress, Nicole Kessinger, has not been accused or convicted of any crime. And finally, this case has indeed been unusual in the way that a lot of evidence has been made public by the prosecution, which is likely why so many true crime fans are so obsessed with it. they have a lot of material. As I said, I'm not an expert, but looking from the outside, this crime, while atrocious, is quite straightforward. A man suffering from deep narcissistic disorder finds himself locked in a marriage he doesn't want anymore. He finds a new love, and he literally loses his mind, killing his whole family, thinking he would get away with it. Now, I realize this is a wild simplification, but we will go along with it for the purpose of this video. As I kept reading onto this case, I could not understand why AD would want me to comment about o.t.o abuses on his channel, and why would he want to know more about one of the holidays of the Thelemic calendar, the feast for the first night of the Prophet and his bride. I could only glimpse from his other videos that it appeared to be some evidence linking Watts' mistresses, Nicole Kessinger, to the Denver's Thelemic community. Remember the satanic panic we discussed at the beginning of the video? Well, it turns out that the same mentality is at play here, since AD is looking into some outlandish claims made by one Cherlyn Cadell, author of the recently published book, Letters from Christopher. Miss Cadell penned the 286 pages book after obtaining visitations rights with Watts, and her not so subtle aim the blame of this horrible crime from this narcissistic monster elsewhere, specifically his mistress, the aforementioned Nicole Kessinger. Without going into too much detail, a quick search on Cadell showed that her perspective is considered by the vast majority completely but on Amazon and on Goodreads, with reviewers also noticing how the whole thing is barely edited and it's published by Dorrance Publishing, a well-known publisher, that is one where it's the author itself that pays the company to print and distribute the book. And so things started to become a little clearer. But I still could not understand why AD wanted to discuss Aleistercrowley, Thelema, and o.t.o in relation to this case. Once again, the answer came by looking more into Cherlyn Cadell. AD and his followers maintained that Cadell kept some further details out of the book, and that is that Nicole Kessinger was into very dark things, that she was somewhat connected to the New Age Gaia belief, whatever that is, and had him drink a green beverage with a stone in it every day. And finally, that she attended some events at Crux Ansata Oasis, the local o.t.o group in Denver. And here we are, the roots of another satanic pain's wave forming. We have completely unsubstantiated claims placed on a woman who was never prosecuted in any shape and form, despite having ties with the murderer. We have wild correlations from left and right. We have an audience of true crime fanatics that are willing not only to gloss over the clearly misogynistic overtones of this blame shifting, but are also very happy to launch themselves into senseless witch hunts. Cherlyn Cadell herself, in a text exchange with Watts' sisters Jamie, says, "Wouldn't it be great if we could prove that something satanic happened?" That's genuinely chilling. At the end of the interview, where I spent 90 minutes hoping that AD and his audience would want to discuss the rather real and serious issues within Ordo Templi Orientis, and that namely, once again, the culture of silence and abuse enforced by its leadership, I realized that all they wanted was their own personal witch hunt. And while the vast majority of the commenting people were polite, even rather disgusted by the practices of Thelema, and while the odd one here or there stated clearly that this was not going anywhere, likely realizing the foolishness of this line of thinking, there were also those who started to claim that I was either not high up in the organization to know the truth, or that I was an agent of disinformation sent by the power that be. What I found disheartening most of all were those comments that betrayed a sort of Christian supremacy way of thinking that I genuinely thought we finally left behind as a society. And instead, we are experiencing a collective devolution into the worst of backward thinking, And this is beyond Trump or Brexit or anything strictly political. This is in fact a complete derailment of the past 16 years of social evolution, and one so pervasive that, and likely unstoppable by now, that has long infected the fringes of society as well, those places that were supposed to be progressive. A large number of good citizens, intellectuals, and contributors to the economy are followers of less known esoteric beliefs. For well-meaning Christians to lump them all into an unclean bowl of devil worshippers is not the way forward in a world that is radicalizing and changing. It is very easy and lazy to demonize and catastrophize. But look, if my God looks different, what does it matter to you if we are working on making the world a more open space, which is exactly what we should return to put our focus on? In the end, it is fundamental to recognize the problem. It is fundamental to realize that these Christian fundamentalists have the same worldview of those Thelemites affected by severe cognitive dissonance that have been supporting the alt-right for the past few years. They all consider themselves absolutely right, untouchable, and on a mission from God, however they understand the concept. A mission to eradicate the different. Thankfully, this is also where the good people realize it's time to fight back. I have some ideas on how to do it, and I will work in the coming months to share them with anyone willing to listen. I aim at updating this channel as regularly as I can, as well as continuing writing and teaching on my Patreon page, link below. So see you in the ethers.